Thanks for coming to the event, the Misco event. I'm Jon Honeyball. I'm contributing editor of PC Pro. Have been now for some 17 years or so. 233 issues, something like that. And I'm here to talk to you about Windows 8 Touch and the Enterprise. And I think we are at what you might call a moment of a perfect storm. Now, right now, is the time to start thinking about this. Not last year, not next year, but now. And the question is, why? Well, tablets are out there. I'm sure you can find lots of them here, touch devices. And when I talk about touch devices, I'm going to be a bit controversial and say, for me, touch devices don't have keyboards. The idea of slapping a touch screen onto an Ultrabook to me seems a bit of a weird thing. I understand why Intel has done it, but to me, a keyboard, a screen that goes boing when you start poking at it doesn't really work very well. For me, a tablet is something you hold and you work with, and it doesn't have a physical keyboard. Maybe it has a physical keyboard that you dock with when you get back to your desk, but when you're in touch mode, it's something you pick up and use. I should just repeat, I apologise for my throat. I'm getting over the flu. And so if I gracefully sort of fade out over the next 20 minutes and just end up croaking, then you'll know what's happened. I have got a bottle of gin, at least that's what they promised me it was, and cough sweets. Touch is not new. Touch is not new in the enterprise. We've had touch and we've had tablets for a long, long time. And we've had pen for a long time. Much longer than people remember. My first pen Windows tablet was actually something called a Compact Concerto in 1983, and it ran Windows 3.1 pen edition, if you can remember back that far. It had a screen that was almost completely opaque and a battery life measured in the minutes, but it did work, and you could do handwriting recognition on it, and all of that stuff worked. And that was good 20 years ago. And so why has it been a failure up till now? Why has it been dragging its heels? Why hasn't it really happened? And why now? Why is now the right time? To answer that, technology has moved forward unbelievably in 20 years. I still can't believe, I'm of an age where I quite merrily get muddled up between megabytes and gigabytes because, you know, 256K seemed like an awful lot not very long ago, and now it's 256 terabytes. And sometimes it's very easy to get completely lost on the amount of scale involved in this change. But the technology that has really changed is the power consumption of the processors, the battery technology, and the screen technology. And those are just unbelievably better now compared to even 5 years ago. So what is this perfect storm of today? He wants me to come forward. This perfect storm of today is Windows 8.1 on Intel. Not 8.0, not ARM. Windows 8.1 on Intel for business users. It's the Haswell chipset, or the ones that are coming. Anything from earlier in this year, anything from last year, no, 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 no. If it's not Haswell or later, don't even think about it. Because as we're going through these generations of chipset change from Intel, we are getting 20, 30, 40, 50% improvements in power performance and battery capability. It's absolutely scary what's changing on that front. So 8.1, because that's our bug fix 8.0. Intel, not because I don't like ARM, I think ARM is absolutely lovely, but the ARM implementation of Windows 8 is not good enough, not for the enterprise, for reasons I'll come back to. We have some exceptionally good now lithium polymer batteries in the last 12, 18 months. You can now start to see 10 to 12 hours of battery life on a handheld Intel-based tablet. And a prediction, in the next 18 months, that's going to double. I've seen roadmaps, which I wish I could tell you about, but I'd have to throw myself off the parapet, about where Intel is going, and their next 2 generations are going to be even more aggressive than the last 2. We have got some unbelievably good screen technologies now. Screen technologies coming now to market this quarter that are enough to make you rethink how you design your apps, what you present on screen, how you show information. I don't know if Samsung have got them here, and I haven't had time to look at their stand, but they are about to launch, or maybe you have already launched, a 13.3-inch screen, which is 3200 by 1800 pixels. It is unbelievably good. It is effectively a few DPI short of 300 DPI. It's effectively laser print quality on a screen in full color. And it doesn't materially impact the battery life too badly. Why? Because it's actually their next generation of screen technology on the glass, and therefore it's one step ahead on the power consumption, even though there are 4 times as many pixels. So if you're thinking about a 1300 by 800 pixel screen, no. 1920 by 1200 minimum, preferably if you're really looking for 3200, and then you architect for it. And then you suddenly realize, hey, I can have something that's approximately A4 in size, in full color, at laser print quality. Full photo quality, but laser print on black and white text. That is scary, absolutely scary, because it's unbelievably readable. But you need 8.1, because 8.0 is horribly sucky on very, very high resolution screens. You need high performance Wi-Fi, 802.11ac. You need to get out of 2.4 gig. You need to get into 5 gig. Try setting up a 2.4 gig Wi-Fi infrastructure anywhere inside the M25, and you're a braver person than I am. There's just far too much clutter. You need to get your whole infrastructure out onto 5 gig. 802.11ac is fantastic. It can be, we've measured in my lab, it can be 4 times or so faster than the fastest 5 gig N under the best conditions. And we now have LTE. I came in on the train this morning down from where I live near Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire, and my iPhone 5C leapt with joy when it suddenly switched to 4G on EE, and I was suddenly getting 32 megabits a second download speed. That means you can now walk around with the device with effectively LAN performance walking down the street. And that means we should be architecting for that, because that's not going to go away, that's not going to go worse, that's simply going to be the baseline moving forward. So what I'm talking here is 10, 12 hours battery life, very high resolution color screens, Windows 8.1 on Intel, or AMD, but I mean Intel architecture, exceptional Wi-Fi performance and exceptional roaming performance. And at this point you suddenly should have that light bulb moment which says, don't start thinking in terms of 2008. You should now start to be thinking in terms of 2016, 17 and 18. Touch on tablets. Some people view it in the corporate environment as being a terrible threat. Oh, no, we don't want that. Oh, no. Windows 7 64-bit is where it is. That's where our effort is going. That's what we're deploying. And that's all very lovely. Keep doing it. Nothing wrong with it. Although I would say Windows 8.1 in full screen mode of desktop mode is a more mature, more robust operating system than Windows 7 64-bit is. But if you're deploying Windows 7 64-bit, thumbs up from me. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay? What I'm talking about here is something new, something different. Okay? That means you keep your existing deployment plans. What you're doing now, you keep doing. You keep your existing deployment tools. What you're using now, your management tools, you keep doing. All of your inbuilt services management stuff, you keep doing it. Because Windows 8.1 on Intel, on a touch tablet, is fully manageable just like a desktop, just like a server. That's why you want the Intel version, because the Windows RT version doesn't allow you to join a domain. If you've got no AD, you've got no group policy. If you've got no group policy, you've not got no LAN management. la 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 la. That's also why you don't use an iPad, because you've got no Active Directory, you've got no group policy. Yeah, you can fudge stuff in through the Exchange Server connector stuff, etc., in the same way that you can on Windows RT. But for me, with my sysadmin hat on, I want to get in there and I want to control everything, because sysadmins are control freaks. Hands up for control freaks, yes. Oh, lovely, right? You want to be sure that you know what's going on. You want to be certain that things are patched. You want to be sure that things are locked down appropriately. And you can't do that on the end of a long piece of string, which is what you get with an iPad or what you get with Windows RT. Unless you start bolting on some really quite major pieces of third-party technology, which can then lock you into a world that maybe you didn't want to go into in the first place. With Intel, Windows 8.1, you just get it in the box. It just works like the whole rest of your network. There is no difference. So from a sysadmin point of view, you can deploy these things, you can manage them, you can control them, you can remote admin them, you can update them, you can group policy them, you can lock them down, you can open them up, do whatever you like from the comfort of your bedroom, your office at work, okay? Just like you do with your Windows 7 desktops. Why make things more complicated? Because the hardware cost difference here is, in the long term, negligible, and the performance of the emerging Intel platforms is comparable to ARM. I'm not saying necessarily the same, but comparable. It's workable if you look at the very latest hardware. Don't think about Windows 8 reviews on early hardware of a year ago. That is prehistoric by comparison to the technologies that are coming out now. So, we all love Active Directory because, well, we sort of learned to love it really over the last 13 years. We know how to make it work, we know how to make it jump through hoops, we know how to manage our network, we've got our full suite of network management tools, we just keep doing that. Crank the handle, keep it going. For development purposes, well, we have got line of business application developments, infrastructure, pipelines, etc. We just use all of that. You don't have to go and move your dev platform to Android tools or move your dev platform to iOS. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I'm quite happily sat here with an iPhone 5C, great platform. We're talking corporate infrastructure here, okay? And corporate infrastructure is all about getting the bang for the buck. And it's not conflating two worlds, and these are two separate worlds. And if only Microsoft had worked this out from the beginning, it would be an awful lot easier for everybody. But they didn't. Why not do BYOD? The big buzzword. Everyone out there says, oh, just give money to the staff and just tell them to bring in their Android, Galaxy, Samsung, whatever thing. No. Every time I see BYOD in action, I end up calling it bring your own disaster. Okay, there isn't an operating system out there with the potential, but possible exception of BlackBerry, rest in peace, which actually allows you to do a proper separation of church and state between what belongs to the user, what apps they own, what data they own, what services they own, and the corporate data and the corporate infrastructure and the corporate services. Now, BlackBerry can do this, and in fact it's probably one of the reasons why it will survive in some form, because it does have some very interesting IP. In the iOS world, no. In the Android world, no. In the Windows world, no. Because up until fairly recently, of course, Microsoft believed a home user was somebody who had a Windows PC but just didn't have an Active Directory server. When you're talking about corporate devices, you go and buy them yourself for your corporate and you deploy them. I have no problem with people bringing in hardware into the office. Great idea. You give them a separate, secured, public Wi-Fi LAN, and they can sit there and follow Barry Manilow all day on their iPad, their Galaxy, their whatever. And over here, we have the business infrastructure. Okay, I'm not suggesting that people mustn't use Facebook, they mustn't use all of that stuff, Twitter and all the rest of it. Absolutely fine. But you separate out work from home. It's not difficult. You give them a separate network. You encourage them. People work better when they're happy. We know this stuff. It's not difficult. Allow them to bring their smartphone, their tablet, because they're going to bring it in anyway, because they're going to be sat on the train doing their Twitter, and it's going to be in their bag. Let them sit it on their desk, connect it to a well-designed, well-provisioned Wi-Fi network, and just let them get on with it. Okay, and just keep all of that away from your corporate network. Okay, BYOD, no, 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 no. Because at the end of the day, who owns the data? Who owns the settings? Who owns the information? Whose neck is on the line when something leaks? If somebody leaves their tablet on the back seat of a taxi, whose neck's on the line? Are you prepared to remote wipe their device, taking out their entire photo history of their 3-year-old child? Which, oops, they forgot to back up. Okay? This is an HR disaster in the house. I mean, no, just don't. Just do not go near anybody's home machine. So when I talk about developing apps for touch for the corporate space, what am I talking about? I'm talking about taking your existing dev team, splitting off a Skunkworks development team, and making them live and breathe touch. No keyboards allowed. Well, okay, that's being a bit grotesque, but they have to absolutely sit inside this space. You want to do rapid application development. You need to identify internal, external applications that you can develop, build, deploy, whether they come in from third parties, whether they are touch-enabled applications from your favorite infrastructure people like Microsoft Dynamics or SAP or whatever, and the custom-built stuff that you do yourself. And that team absolutely has to own that space. But this is your golden opportunity to rewrite the rules. And you rewrite the rules so that their deliverables are every 8 weeks. And even more scary, you get them to publish what will be out in 8 weeks' time. Okay? This is the golden opportunity to change the way internal app infrastructure work is done inside the organization. It's the golden ticket for the next 5 years, because you'll be wanting to roll this stuff out ubiquitously, absolutely everywhere across your organization, both internally and externally. The thinking that you will learn from this will apply to your customer-facing applications, whether you're a bank doing like Barclays applications on your iPhone and so forth, through to internal or maybe point-of-sale type devices, through to people in shop fronts, through to actual internal infrastructure applications that you're running. You've got to capture this knowledge and way of working, and you've got to do it right now, and you've got to make the best, absolute best use of it. Separate team, good people. That's why you sit on the existing platform that you know, because you can make this work. Okay? If you start outsourcing to another development house on a different platform that you don't know, you're just throwing money out the door, because you won't own the IP, at least you won't really understand the IP, you won't get the benefit from it. And then that's just a waste of money. You've got to demonstrate feedback, to the users, and you must push back against existing organization roles. I gave a speech with Misco and PC Pro about 8 weeks ago at the Ivy, some financial directors from the City of London banking. And when I said 8-week deliverables, they all went, oh no, 8 weeks? They can't even make a cup of coffee in 8 weeks, let alone deliver a version of an app. And when I said, 8 weeks, bang, 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 they said, whoa, wow. I said, not good enough. Just not good enough. Because if you can't deliver that, you are part of the problem. Okay? And they really didn't like that. They got really upset at that thought. Think strategically about this. There is an ROI. Sorry, chewing on my locket. There is an ROI. There is a way of capturing this data. You must farm the users for this. You must measure, 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 measure. Far too many applications are deployed out there on a wing and a prayer. How many corporate IT applications can we put our hands up and say, well, we kind of thought it was a good idea, but, it didn't really quite deliver. It was kind of not good enough. This is 2013, 2014. Every penny counts, and you've got to make every penny work. Measure the ROI. Actively track usage. I know people think that that's verges on spying on your customers, whether they be internal or external. No. Track what they're doing. Where is the data coming from? Where is it going? How long are they staying in applications? We do this all the time on websites. Apply that thinking inside applications. Who is using it? Why are they using it? Why aren't they using it? A very good question to ask people. Engage with the customers, and that means being open and honest with them. I know that's going to be very scary to IT departments, telling the customers what they're going to get and when they're going to get it. But it doesn't half focus the attention of the dev leads. Small incremental pieces rolled out easily, because we now have the infrastructure inside the organization that you can do daily updates to all of your desktops, can't you? Yes, John. If you can't do daily updates to all of your desktops, why not? No, this isn't hard. It should be sit at the pub Friday night, 5 o'clock, wipe all desktops and reinstall all operating systems and applications, and do it in the next 20 minutes. All versions, all apps, all third-party add-ins. Just make it work, please. I actually looked at a piece of software from a UK development house. Allows you to do that, including things like RAID controller firmware patches. Okay? Blow your entire desktop and server environment away every night if you want to. Every night of the day. Really changes the way you think about management tools. And help desk and all that stuff. We just say, just go have a coffee, and by the time you come back, your machine will have been absolutely bare metal wiped and reinstalled for you. Quite scary. But you've got to maximize the business value of what you are doing. I'm running out of time. Mistakes, the classic things that people get wrong. And this one hurts to say, because I'm stood here as a 49-year-old with grey hair, and my first point here is, don't think like a 40-year-old. Think like an 18-year-old. Tough to do. But suddenly realise that you've got an entire generation of staff, customers, people you interact with, who don't think the same way as you. This is one of the biggest problems to get over. You can't give people a mouse and say, get on with it. You can't give them a keyboard. You give them a touch interface. Oh, by the way, when I talk about touch applications, if you bring up that on-screen keyboard, no. No. That is point of last resort if you bring up the on-screen keyboard, because if you've done that, you've failed. Right? It should be pickers, it should be selectors, it should be all sorts of stuff. I saw a software package last week at a company in Cambridge. They've written themselves, actually running on an iPad, doesn't matter, could easily have been on a Windows platform. And they were collecting sales information at point of sale stuff for new customers, B2B. And the classic thing, of course, is, can I take your name and address, please, and how many of our widgets you want? No, they just used the camera, they photographed the business card, and then took the essential details. 10 seconds, you're done. And the customers love it. It was like, is that it? I don't have to, no. I don't have to, no. Done, thank you. Got a photograph of it. Back at the office, you can go through some OCR if you want to, or someone can bring it up on screen and type the details in. But you think about the workflow, you think about the process. You don't give them a keyboard to type into, which is really, keyboards on touch screens not very nice, so don't do it. Use choices, use scrollers, use levers, use interesting, exciting ways of interacting with your data. Pre-populate, use some AI. You've got bandwidth, pull stuff down, give choices. Don't ask people to start typing their name in and their postcode. I mean, for goodness sakes, really. This is 2013. We can do better than that. So think like an 18-year-old, because these people in 10 years are going to be your 30-year-olds. And in 15 years' time, they're going to be your IT directors. And they don't think like us. They don't work like us. They assume everything's connected all the time. They assume that this stuff just works. They assume a whole different set of assumptions to you and me. You know, you and I with the grey hair, we think that LANs are a modern miracle, how the electrons flow around the building. No, this is a whole different way of thinking, and get that thinking on board into your dev team. Touch is natural, it's prevalent, and it's taking over from WIMP. Mice and keyboards are on the way out, and they will be only in place in things like high-end workstations and so forth in 5 years' time. Speech is going to become huge. Reset your expectations. Think, where are you wanting to be with this in 4 years' time? And that is not 4 years on from where you were 4 years ago. It's a different world, a different space. And as I said, there is this window of opportunity now with new hardware, new screen, new battery technologies, development tools, plus the existing management infrastructures that we've got to really make this work. Push the business value and the ROI. You've got to screw every penny out of every pound that you've got. And demand the same from your suppliers and IT components and infrastructure. If someone wants to come and play on your network and provide tools on your network and so forth, they've got to work in this space too. Right? Set the same high bar for everybody else that you're applying to yourself. And you'll be very surprised as to who starts falling out of the tree very quickly. And don't settle for second best. It really is possible to do some absolutely remarkable things with this technology today. And in 2 years' time, an awful lot of line of business processes across just an endless world of business opportunity is going to be very, very different to how it is today. It's going to be way faster. It's going to be way more intuitive. It's going to be an awful lot more reliable. And people who have gone down this route at that point are going to turn around and say, well, yeah, it just works. It's just like, what's the problem? It just happens. And that is what IT should be. Thank you. While I croak my way into some gin and tonic, oh, it says water on the front, have we got any questions? No questions at all? Questions, sir?
Charles Corbin from Homeless Link. I've heard or read your view before about sort of PCs being on the way out, and being a dinosaur that I am, I still have a problem with that view, as I can't picture the office environment in 5 years' time. And while he was speaking, I was picturing various scenarios. I can't picture the office environment or workflows without your point-and-click keyboard for most of the typical jobs that we have to do.
Sure. So how do we reconcile that?
Yes.
Okay, good question. I'll take it back then, you can't argue. Okay. No, you're quite right. There is a whole heap of stuff that's still going to be requiring that way of working. That's not going to change. But there's a whole heap of working that can change and will change. There's a lot of stuff that we do on our PCs every day that actually we're not doing on our PCs every day. You think about where and how you do your email now. A lot of people are not doing email on their desktop anymore. They're doing email and Outlook and calendaring stuff on a device in their pocket, because it's in their pocket, it's with them all the time. And as we have this shift towards working on the device that you have with you, the role of the desktop will become more specialized. It will be for those times when I need to work on a 30-inch screen because I have this huge Excel worksheet to work on. You know, trying to work on Excel on a tablet, you know, 200 row. I mean, I was trying to work last night on a 200 by 5,000 row Excel, 200 column by 5,000 row Excel table, and trying to do it on a 9-inch, 10-inch Windows tablet, and it's awful because you just need the space. Yeah? And that role will still apply. That's not going to go away. That's not going to change. You can't do CAD/CAM well. You can't do design very well. You can't do all sorts of things unless you have got a big screen. But it could be a big screen that's actually dockable. I've already got I've got a Dell 18-inch tablet. The screen resolution is nowhere near good enough, but you can see the direction. It's 18-inch across tablet that you can pick up and walk off with you. But you can put it in the dock and work at it with a keyboard and a mouse. What I'm saying is that dedicated PCs are on the way out. Dockable devices that may actually function like a PC are not. We're going to see tablets that go into docks, and Microsoft Surface 2, they announced last week, will come at the beginning of next year with a dock, and you can then drive a 30 or a 40-inch monitor from that and a keyboard and a mouse. And people will bring it back on their pile of papers, and they'll drop it into the dock and then turn their attention here, not onto that. So it's this multifunctionness that's going to become really important. But when they're done the work that they need the big screen for, they will pick it up and walk off to the next meeting. And their PC will still be with them. But that's not a PC in the conventional sense of a CPU box under the desk and a monitor and a keyboard and an Ethernet cable. Okay? Any other questions? So.
Can I put a view to you and see if you agree? When the iPad came out, I think Microsoft and probably BlackBerry said on-screen keyboards are terrible. You said so. What we don't realise, because we're computer people, is that most people think normal keyboards are terrible.
Oh, absolutely. Keyboards are awful. Mice are. No, we like them because that's what we know.
But most people don't.
Well, my point about the 18-year-olds is that we're coming up with a generation of people who think that SMS style 9 button data entry is actually faster than typing for them. Okay, they do talk in this very sort of type of way of talking, but nevertheless, we've now got touch panels. We've now got the leap motion type of stuff of three-dimensional modeling and mapping. All of these things are going to be a huge wave of complexity away from the traditional QWERTY keyboard and a mouse. Absolutely. And this is a skill set that is going to become less important. 20 years ago, you could argue, 30 years ago, you could argue that keyboard skills from the era of the typewriter was kind of important. Then we moved into word processing skills, and then we moved into Microsoft Office skills, and that's on the way down now. We're now into ways of thinking about data in a more social way, in a more interactive way, in a more graphical way, in a faster and more expression-led way. And yes, that's exactly to my point about the 18-year-olds are your 30-year-olds in 10 years' time. And it's scary, because we're all sat there quite happily working away on our IBM keyboards, thinking like it's 1975. And most people are still going out there with a mouse, whereas I much prefer a touchpad because you can do multi-finger gesture type stuff on a touchpad, whereas a mouse, if I want precision, I'll use a pen. But I've got them on Windows. Doesn't everyone have everything? Oh. No, but the place to the point about touch, 10-finger touch. When you think about what you can do in a line of business application with 10-finger simultaneous touch on a active screen, in terms of molding data, moving it around, working with it, manipulating it. Think what you can do in terms of spinning data pivots and so forth. If you can actually pick things up and turn them around on a surface. Try it. It's really good fun. But people will wake up to that and then suddenly realise, hey, that's really easy, that's really intuitive. Why haven't we been doing this all the time? Yeah? Why do we have graphs with little sliders underneath them and you have to pick one up and move it to make things happen? Or just put your finger on it and move it, and actually interact much more intently with what's going on. Okay? Who's got another question?
You spoke about touch in the sense of it being sort of the next layer.
Yes.
Do you see it as an intermediary point to three-dimensional gesturing like Connect, Leap Motion, things like that?
I think the leap motion thing is incredibly interesting. On Windows or on Mac, being able to do things in a three-dimensional space, I think, is amazing. And Microsoft really dropped the ball with Kinect, because there is the Kinect for Windows kit. But the problem with that is it requires a 12-volt voltage rail, because the heat camera that they use requires a high voltage rail in order to get a good signal-to-noise ratio, which is why, although it will plug in on a USB port, it can't be powered from USB. You have to have a mains power adapter for it to get the voltage rail. And they haven't fixed that problem yet. Leap have gone for a much more simplified way of doing things with just infrared LEDs, so it will work off a USB port. But yes, I think HP have just announced a laptop with the Leap engine built into it, along with a keyboard and a trackpad, but a Leap sensor as well. Yes, I do. I think the way we do data modeling, the way we touch things, the way we want to spin data, the way we want to find that last 5% in the data, because that's where the big value is, and that means being able to manipulate multi-dimensional data very easily, and that means weird gestures and ways. And trying to use a mouse to move things in a three-dimensional space is always a very weird thing to do. Touch is not going to go away, because touch is a one surface thing. It's another element in the repertoire. Three-dimensional space is another entry. Keyboard isn't going away, but it's going to be deprecated. Similarly, mouse. Voice control is going to become very important. Even things like camera and face recognition and so forth will be another space. You'll sit down in front of your computer and it will know who you are. Okay? There's no reason why we can't do that today. Not as the sole security, but as part of multi-factor. And all sorts of things. Have you got a phone next to you? If so, turn the music down. I mean, there's just so many things you can do with some interesting AI coupled to a camera looking at you. Okay, so all of these will mix together. Okay, touch is not something that's happening in a short term on a path to something else. It's something that's adding to the repertoire. So,
for my sins, I work in a school, so I work with a couple of 17, 18 and 19-year-olds, and I do get a view of how they think. By the way, the texting on numbers thing is dead. They don't do it.
Yes.
But the keyboard remains, I think you would agree, is the single biggest barrier to making technology more accessible and more mobile.
Yes.
I think possibly the replacement of that is voice, which you touched on.
Yes.
But how do you see voice being integrated into the working environment?
Well, we do voice in the working. So the question was about keyboard is being deprecated, and this gentleman works with 16, 17, 18-year-old school children, and keyboard for them is a dead thing. How do we see voice integrating into the business workplace? Well, the answer is we already do it. How much of the day do each of us spend talking on the telephone? We all do voice all the time. Yeah? And we manage perfectly well. If you were to say to me, the big worry about voice is that you'll be able to shout over someone's partition and say, format C colon, and that, sounds like great fun. But there's going to be a huge cacophony and a problem. Well, we have people on the phone all the time in offices now.
But if you're in a meeting trying to take notes, you can't sit there and talk when somebody else is talking.
No, we can't. That's why I'm saying is that there is no one solution to this. There's going to be, it could be if somebody else is doing it, that actually what you do is you hold your conversation, you record the whole lot, you post-process it offline, and do voice recognition across the entire stream, and that will work out which each person is and separate out the conversation. That's doable today. Right? There's no reason why you can't do that. And if you want the really fun bit, say, who is providing the technology or the road plan to the technology today that allows you to start a conversation on SMS, move to email, go into a telephone call, go face-to-face, go back to a telephone call and end up on SMS, and have one seamless stream of text that covers the entire conversation across all media types, okay? Because that's the holy grail. Because that will require some element of personal recorder and personal camera stuff, watching what I'm doing, recording what I'm saying, recording what I'm being told, and all of this stuff is going to be number crunched. But the capability to do that is just minutes away. It's not even years away. It's really doable today if there was a will to put it together. And so your example about meetings, well, just record the whole lot. It doesn't take that long to do voice recognition. In fact, something like Microsoft OneNote will almost do it in the background for you. You know, I all the time record in OneNote, and it does text recognition for me in the background. So I can search my OneNote for things that people have said in the conversation. And it will take me, if I then click on the piece of text, it will then take me to the point in the recording where that word was recognised out, and I can listen to the context there. And how many years has that been going on for? 3, 4 years? And that's on most people's desktops today. It really is much, much closer than people realise. It's just a matter of wiring up a few pieces together like this, and suddenly, kaboom, the whole thing looks entirely different to how we're doing it today. Right, gentle persons, thank you very much for coming. I hope it was interesting. My email address is liberally splattered across PC Pro. Do keep in contact, and thank you very much for coming.